Welcome to the second of our tutorials for Unit 401. This time we're going to take a look at Learning Outcome 2. Learning Outcome 2 is describing how to ensure that sales employees have a clear understanding of the organisation's legal, regulatory, ethical and social policies and procedures, and the importance of putting them into place. A number of internal communication channels can be used within a company to ensure information about policies and procedures are known and understood. So this learning outcome is all about how do we get the information across to our salespeople. Let's first of all talk about compliance culture. Developing a compliance culture within an organisation is vital to an effective compliance function. However, it is important that within this culture there is a balance. That there is a balance between flexibility for the sales team to respond to individual customer needs, but also obviously meeting the actual regulations. A compliance culture allows the implementation of an effective compliance monitoring programme, which is linked into senior management. It often helps to demonstrate to regulators that the organisation has the right compliance mindset. And this learning outcome is all about very much mindset of a company and indeed the sales force in that company. Within the culture, it's important that the key information is not only readily and easily accessible, but that it is clearly communicated. So this is quite important. For us to have the right compliance culture, it's not only important that they can access the information, it's also important that they understand the information. But let's move on to accessibility. So each employee should have access to a copy of all of the policies and procedures. For example, through procedures manuals, through employee handbooks and company handbooks, through shared drives, through the company's intranet, or just through the use of email. And there may also be a main point of contact within the company. So for example, it could be the line manager, but maybe there should also be within the company a company expert who truly understands what these policies and procedures are. And thirdly, how do we communicate and how do we ensure that there's an understanding? Well, it's important to ensure that policies and procedures are properly communicated and understood by all staff and not just available for reference. Effective communication channels include the following examples. So for example, you could have new staff induction programs. So companies should ensure that this covers all the relevant policies and procedures in a clear and comprehensive manner relating to their role. Staff training sessions. So this ideally comprises initial training. It could include further sessions for a review, for discussion. You could have updates around it and you could amend that accordingly. Everything that you deliver should have very much clear language. So none of the language that you use should be ambiguous. Make sure it's clear. And also you should consider using policy management software and templates. Why? Well, because this creates consistency and clarity across all departments within your company. You should also think about the way that people learn. As we know, often on our training courses, we talk about the way that different people learn, their different learning styles. Some people may be auditory, visual, kinesthetic. So think about delivering the training in different ways, different methods. Maybe you should utilize in the team meetings. Does your company have regular monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, weekly meetings with the sales team? Well, if so, is there an opportunity to utilize some of these that may be used for discussions and updating on certainly policy changes? Getting interactive workshops together. These will facilitate learning with maybe the opportunity to role play certain examples, certain situations that the salespeople may be in, and then you can discuss what are the issues that come out of that and how should people deal with them. It may actually start to come up with things you haven't thought about, which maybe you could then feed back to the organisation. E-learning. Obviously e-learning is becoming more and more popular. You're watching this video right now, and maybe webinars, maybe seminars, etc. So these offer the flexibility and freedom to be able to manage your staff's time. They can be particularly useful if you have various offices across the country, maybe various offices across the world. You may have international sales teams, and obviously it means that we don't all have to be at the same place at the same time. Providing it within the constraints of confidentiality, discussion boards may be something else that you could use and encourage staff to participate in. Obviously, when it comes to training, it's important to make sure it's at all levels within the organisation, not just at junior staff, not just at new members, but make sure that your senior members from board down, root and branch if you like, make sure that they are getting involved with these training sessions. And also think about who is delivering this training. So, for example, do we need expert external trainers for certain specialist topics? Who is your internal expert? Who is your person within the company who knows all of this? Are we doing group training that is specifically designed for a certain department? So there may be certain issues for your telesales team, for example, that need to have an understanding, which is not so relevant to other parts of the company. And if you are using a trainer-trainer type process, are you ensuring that that trainer understands and is properly on board with everything that we're talking about? Because what they say will probably go within the company. So are they given the policy the due respect that it deserves? Using quizzes and multiple choice assessment, maybe an online knowledge test, that's always useful. It's important whenever you do some training, try and get some sort of sign-off of attendance. Again, in terms of adhering to the policy and ensuring that we are compliant, it's good to have some sort of record. And the timeliness of your communications is vital. Any communications must comply with deadlines for enforcement, and the organisation should ensure that training is conducted in a timely fashion. So if there's a new policy change, let's make sure that we're getting them trained as and when they need to be trained. And finally, if there is a query, what is the process? Is it through the line manager, or is it through the company expert that we spoke about earlier? But there needs to be a policy, there needs to be a way that I as an individual can inform you as the organisation if there is a problem or if there's something that I don't understand. So let's move on to learning outcome 2.2, which is really all about the monitoring of the salespeople's understanding of the procedure and whether or not they are adhering to those policies. So as well as the methods outlined in Learning Outcome 2.1, methods such as appraisals, assessments, reviews, tests offer valuable insight and opportunities to ensure that policies are known, understood and applied by all of the staff. These opportunities work together with relevant external stakeholders' comments to monitor compliance. So it's important to constantly be thinking about the external stakeholders and what they are feeding in to be able to feed back to this sort of monitoring. So let's take a look at some of these. The first one is assessment. Initial assessment tests and role plays enable managers to check the understanding and for the individual to become aware of any areas that they need to improve their knowledge on. So the first thing is we need to assess the as is. What is the current situation? Once we've done that, we need to review through potentially tests what knowledge has actually been assessed. So this enables managers to check that knowledge has been maintained. So we've done the training, we've assessed, and now we're monitoring whether or not it's been retained. And any updates, therefore, have they been taken on board? So if there's a new policy that came out, it's worth, you've trained it, are they understanding it? Thirdly, surveys. Surveys, now these could be in electronic form, they could be in written form. They very much help to assess policies and whether or not they've resonated with the staff. So this comes back to very much the compliance culture that we talk about. What is the mindset of your sales force when it comes to compliance? We've mentioned appraisals. The appraisal process within a company should really be used to ensure that there is a continued application of the compliance knowledge. It is an opportunity as well just to listen to your people, to listen to any concerns that they may have, for them to be able to give you feedback, for you to be able to give them feedback, very much on how to maintain, improve or enhance their performance and the overall company performance. External reports. So external reports, these may be from an external stakeholder, as we've discussed before. So for example, it may be a regulatory body that's giving you the feedback. It may be agencies. It may be comments that are being fed via your website, for example, into the organisation. And these can be addressed, the issues that very much you have. They will certainly highlight the issues that you have. And it would demonstrate, I guess, more importantly, that you as an organisation, A, take it seriously, and B, are taking the lead when it comes to compliance. And lastly, monitoring software. Software can be used in certain circumstances, not all, but in certain circumstances. For example, you have a telephone sales force, it may be call recording. But we need to ensure, however, that we communicate that we are using these sort of methods. If we're targeting any specific area of the business, we need to think about the Data Protection Act, we need to think about the Human Rights Act. We need to make sure that, for example, you have a CCTV camera, that should be overt. It shouldn't be used covertly, i.e. it should be out in the open. People should know that this is what you're doing. So in terms of Learning Outcome 2.2, I guess my question to you would be, what method does your company use to monitor compliance? And how, I guess, do they ensure that they're properly understood by your staff? So this is all about monitoring and ensuring the understanding. And let's move on to Learning Outcome 2.3. So 2.3 is all about how you support your people in understanding and being able to put the policy into practice. So as well as the more structured channels and formal processes outlined above, organisations can use more informal methods of communication to provide support and just pretty much keep everyone up to date in what the procedures and policies are. So let's talk about some of the main ways of doing this. Coaching. Well, you know, what is the definition of coaching? Well, coaching is a process that enables learning and development to occur and thus performance to improve. How does that relate to this? Well, to be a successful coach, it requires, first of all, for you as a coach to have an expert knowledge on these policies and procedures. We don't believe that a coach can not understand what they're talking about. There are some views that a coach, as long as they're able to facilitate the information out of an individual, they can coach effectively. In this area, because there are so many rights or wrongs, you very much do need to know as a coach exactly what the policies, procedures, what the social and ethical policies are. But assuming that you have that, there are a variety of styles, skills and techniques that are appropriate to how that you would do this. So coaching really focuses on the individual. It's a two-way relationship which fulfills the organisation's goals and objectives, whilst of course taking into account the personal development needs of that person. So I guess it's two things. What are the needs of the individual? What are the needs of the organisation? Your coaching style should be supportive. And I guess particularly in the area of compliance, I guess there's that balance between being non-judgmental, but of course being on the right side of the law. I guess coaching traditionally was used at a senior level. So often we talk about executive coaching, but now it really needs to be throughout the organisation, and really giving the individual some real good guidance as to how they can implement and be compliant within their role. Let's talk about mentoring. So mentoring, I guess, you know, similar to coaching, isn't it? But in the old days, mentoring used to be very much kind of an older, wiser individual. But really all it is it's if you like, offline help from one person to another, and to help that individual make a transition in their knowledge and in the way that they think. So mentoring is very much all about, it's given that individual the support, being there for them, being that advice. I guess it's like coaching. It focuses on the individual in a two-way relationship. The difference here, I guess, is whereas coaching is more formal, it can be done by someone outside the department. Mentoring is often given by someone within the department, someone who understands it, or someone in a more senior role. And lastly, expert helpers. What do we mean by expert helpers? Well, this could be someone internal or external to the organisation whose role or part of their role is to provide expert assistance and answer any questions that the individuals may have. So, who is your expert helper? If you don't have someone in the company, you really need to be thinking about finding someone outside the company. That may be a consultant, maybe an industry expert, but you really need to think about how you do that. So, information, went too far there, so training. What do we mean by training? Well, we've covered a lot in terms of training. We have mentioned previously in 2.1 how certain training solutions can be used to assist understanding and compliance. And we've mentioned some of the ways that we can do that. It could be e-learning, it could be webinars to enable that interactive way of learning. It could be classroom. It could be formal sessions. It could be manuals that you give out and then follow up through classroom training. That really encompasses the whole area of that. Information sharing, well, what do we mean by that? Well, staff should be encouraged to share information, knowledge, experiences and issues in an informal environment, whatever that environment may be. We discussed earlier the importance of team meetings. That's a great opportunity to get people to share their issues, their challenges and the thoughts around compliance. But I guess more importantly than all of that, they should be encouraged to speak freely. Because if they don't speak freely, you're not going to get the true understanding of what's happening at the coalface. And then lastly, linked to that, there should be a freedom to be able to report back. In a similar way to information sharing, there should be mechanisms within the company that enable staff to report back to management on a particular issue that they are experiencing, in being able to put into practice some of the policies. And it's important that whatever that process is, A, there needs to be freedom, but B, it needs to be appropriate and it needs to be done in a timely fashion. So if I report back to you as my manager that there's an issue, what do you do with that information? What's the procedure and how quickly should you respond? So I guess the question to you is, how does your organisation support your salespeople? Are there any methods that you are using within here? Are there any additional methods? This is not all-inclusive. Are there any other methods that you should be using? So let's talk about the task. If you then want to go on and do the assessment for this. So we mentioned in Learning Outcome 1 that your task is to very much write this assignment so that it's a 2,000 to 3,000 word report for your manager in terms of the compliance that your organisation has and how you ensure that your salespeople follow it. Learning Outcome 1 was really about demonstrating that you understand the laws and, more importantly, that you understand the code of practice that relates to your industry. It could be that your industry has a specific code of practice. If not, you can use one that is similar. And in that, you had to discuss misrepresentation, what that looks like, what impact would misrepresentation have on the company, and how you would advise how you would advise your management and directors on those policies that need to be in place. So that was what we discussed in Learning Outcome 1. In terms of Learning Outcome 2, this is really all about how we then help our salespeople become compliant. So it's suggesting ways of ensuring that your sales employees have a clear understanding of the policies, then explaining how you as a company monitor to ensure that they have that understanding, and then thirdly, ensuring that you provide ways of supporting the salespeople in keeping abreast of the knowledge, in improving the gaps in their knowledge if they don't have it. So very much How do we ensure that they get the understanding? How do you monitor that they've got that understanding? And how do you support them in filling in those gaps? So, in the next module, we'll move on to learning outcome 3. But hopefully, you've got enough information there to go away and do some further reading. For information on further reading, please contact us. We're on www.lemore.com, and any one of us will be able to give you some further reading advice. Don't forget, the guided learning hours for this is 35 hours. So there is additional information that you guys should be going out there to ensure that you have a full understanding. So thank you for listening.